It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together to share their testimonies, to inspire hope, to join our brothers and sisters as we answer the call. Folks, it is time to wake up the lions. And we have an absolute lion with us today. I have had the blessing of being able to sit with this gentleman twice on two other of my podcasts. And I'm honored to have him on this one and to tell a story to a whole new audience and to really explore, how his faith uh, got him through some of these things. We're going to let him tell his story. Please welcome to the show the author of Restored by the Storm: Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges, Bill Derrick. Bill, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Rory. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you so much. Not everybody gets to do the trifecta on my podcasts, and hit three of them. So, I mean,
I
kudos.
it's just further proof that God keeps blessing my life.
You're too kind. I love that.
Uh,
All right, Bill, I'll tell you what, you've got one heck of a story. And every time I hear it, it's still sort of unbelievable and just as inspiring every time. So I'm going to turn this over to you. Who is Bill Derrick? What is your story, brother? And how has God influenced your life through it all?
yes, thank you, Rory. I come from uh, a Catholic tradition background. Grew up, great parents, took us to church every Sunday, and grew up that way. I actually, little known fact that people don't know about me, is I went to a Catholic seminary for 6 years, 4 years of high school,
Hmm,
2 years of college. Because of that, my biblical knowledge, theology, whatever you want to call it, is very strong.
nice.
Um, I don't use that Bible anymore, but I have a Bible I use that's just like all full of notes. I mean, it's just. Uh, but that's kind of my background. When I was there, it was like my last year there, sophomore year, junior college there, and went away on a retreat uh, with some other of my classmates and a priest we had asked to coordinate the retreat for us. And when I was there, I basically gave my life to Jesus at that time. Um, but like many of us, life starts to happen. I left the seminary. I decided that being a priest wasn't going to be my future. Some of that had to do with the vow of celibacy. Didn't think I was cut out for that. And anyway, I met my wife of 45 years. Met her when I was at the University of Minnesota, my senior year, my last year. She was an undergraduate. And she'll stress that she was an undergraduate, that she's much younger than I am. Anyway, met her and um, kind of fell in love, and we got married. And both of us are Type A personalities. And she has a business degree. She has a master's degree in business, and I have an engineering and a master's degree in business. And Type A personalities, and we were in control. And that's the way I kind of looked at life was, had probably didn't have a lot of empathy for those that were struggling because to me, you put yourself in a position, you control what your future is. And probably what's made me a strong business person, strong leader in business. Um, uh, I started in about 1990. I left where I was and came to the family construction and real estate development business in Western Wisconsin. And again, in control. And my faith was good. It was strong. And but I think it might have been more head faith than heart faith.
Hmm,
And I make that comment about my faith going from my head to my heart. And one of the people I know very well, Tom Ziegler, uh, Zig Ziglar's son, made the comment. He said it's not a very long distance physically from the head to the heart, but sometimes it takes a long journey to get there. And I think that's the journey I was on. And so when the Great Recession came, and we felt that we were basically immune to that. Um, we were growing. Our company was growing. Um, my father started the business in 67. We took it over in 1990. We just grew it. No problem. We were in control. The Great Recession, though, and I describe it in my book, Restored by the Storm, that it was almost like God took one of my two by sixes and just hit me upside the head and gave me that moment that said, "What are you doing?" And so we were in it for 5 years and met a lot of people along the way, talked a lot about it. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that maybe I should be a little more prayerful about this, that maybe I shouldn't depend on my own skills, that, you know, maybe I need to talk to my Lord a little bit more. And of course, my prayers first started like, okay, Lord, I understand. I'm not in control like I thought. I've learned my lesson. I'll take this away and let me get back to business as normal. Well, it, finally, I think, and like I said, it was 5 years for us of just struggle. And almost to that point where you just wonder if you're ever going to survive. And it was a point where we were teetering. Um, and I think my prayers, you know, obviously God only knows, but I would say my prayers finally turned to a more of a God, you have a purpose for putting me through this or allowing this to happen to me in our company. I just want to know what that purpose is. And um, I think that's kind of, my faith was certainly strengthening as I turned to him during this time. And I also realized that there's some things you can control, and then there's other things you can't. And trusting in God is one of the things you have to do in life if you're a Christian. And I would say trusting God in life for everyone is what's important, but unfortunately, you know, not everybody has made that step yet. But that was great, and you know, the light at the end of the tunnel became light and not another train coming. And this was like 2012-ish or whatever. But at that time, I started to also start to have some physical ailments that I contributed to the stress of what we had just gone through. And finally, in fall of 2013, I was diagnosed with a non-curable blood cancer called multiple myeloma. When I was diagnosed, it was like, it was just my wife and I were, okay, we got this. And my doctor at the time he was, I don't know if he was a Christian or not. But he said your response to being told you have a malignancy that could kill you, your response isn't normal. And I'm sitting there going, no, I'm realizing now that I just spent the last 5 years in this journey, and God, in His great wisdom, was preparing me for the next storm in my life. A storm that was much more important and much more serious than a financial storm. And I think it was at this point where I realized that God had been working in my life. I maybe needed to be more aware of that, and I also needed Him going forward. And so that struggle with cancer I had, and I can go on, but that struggle with cancer I had is what really drew me closer to God. And I always say, that when disaster strikes, when storms strike in our lives and that, sometimes it's very easy to say, where's God?
Yeah.
And I've had to come to learn that God's there. The question is where are we? And are we looking the other way, or are we turning towards our Lord and saying, gosh, I need you. I really need you right now, you
Yep.
know? And so that's kind of some background.
I mean, like I said, it doesn't get any easier to hear that story. Um, with the topic we're talking about now, you and I have had a chance to get to know each other a little bit, in
Hmm.
between our podcasts. And um, when I went through my incredibly difficult low points in my life, my faith was nowhere near as strong as yours was at that point in time, clearly.
Hmm.
Because, I fell into the thing that I think a lot of men fall into, and that is sort of being angry at God, and saying, seriously, like, seriously,
Yeah.
you know, I just went through this. I went through this. I thought I handled the challenge you gave me. That wasn't enough. Now you got to take more. I mean, every horrible script in my head that the devil could have put there was there. And it took me a while to get out of it. I'm curious. I mean, you had a stronger faith than me for sure. You had the education of the seminary that I didn't even know about until today. So I just learned that about you, this
I like to
guy.
surprise that on people every now and
I
then.
mean, every time I have him on, it's a different thing I learned. So, um, but with that foundation, was that enough to protect you from anger and doubt, or did you, fall into a little bit of that?
I would think that, in all honesty, I had to have some of that. I was maybe more, I think it was more the anxiousness of what was going on
Mm,
and the questioning. God, are you really going to allow these things to be taken away from me? Are you going to really allow the banks to take away the things that I love so much?
mm,
And then all of a sudden, he gave me the opportunity through that to realize what was really important in life.
mm.
And so often I talk about the curse of success. When you're successful, you uh, tend to move away from the things that got you there, and your priorities tend to change. Most people, if you ask them what your priorities are, you could coax them enough to get them to agree their priorities are faith, family, business, and other things.
Sure.
I question whether that was my priorities during the good times in the business back when. I think that perhaps my priorities were like business, business, and everything else. And my wife one day, um, before the recession, which all this stuff kind of helps, she grabbed me and said, yeah, I was at home, and we have four kids, and they were young at the time, and she grabs me. I remember exactly in our house where she kind of grabbed me, and she said, Bill, you got to spend more time with us. And I said, well, you don't understand. The old, you don't understand.
Right.
I I am working hard. I'm working, my business 6 days a week and, at nights. And, I'd bring home building plans at night, roll them out on the counter, be working on estimate, do whatever I had to build our business. And I said, I'm doing this all for you and the kids. And she stopped me and she said, I think we have a misunderstanding here. I didn't marry you for your money. And gosh, I'm so glad that she was honest enough with me at that time. Now, I'm not saying that cured me and I was, the great husband and father, of all times after that. But um, that, and then in the recession, when you have that threat of losing things that you think are so important to you in your life,
Yeah.
and, whether it's the cabin up north or the whatever, you accumulate stuff during successful times. And we think of them as being our treasures. And they really aren't. They're baggage that we drag along around with us if we don't put it in the right perspective. And I was facing that threat. And, Jeannie and I had the opportunity to spend some time and just to say, whether we get through this financial storm or not, we still got each other. We still got our family. We'll, we'll get through it. And that was that was a real blessing. And I think that helped prevent me, putting all that stuff in perspective, prevented me from being an angry person.
Hmm. Do you,
And to this day, I tell people we can control our attitude and our effort, and the rest, God's in control of.
Interesting. Do you think that that you kind of learned that lesson and you were able to kind of shift those priorities through the difficulties you went through with the business, or do you feel like it took the illness to kind of push you the rest of the way over into where your priorities needed to be?
That's a great question. And the only reason why I pause, Roy, is just this feeling that I want to be as truthful and honest as possible. And trying to look back, and of course, what I wrote and in things like that. The one thing I can be sure about is God was working.
Yeah.
Where I was at in the process, I don't know. But he was working on me, and I could see him working on me just by some of the people he brought into my lives and some of the things they said. Just the conversation about how I was so worried that will this ever end? When will it end? How will it end? I'm talking about the financial storm. And he goes, this guy goes, he says, well, Bill, you can determine the ending right now. And I go, well, how? And he said, just quit. And,
Yeah.
give the land back to the banks, let them foreclose on you, protect yourself the best you can, and life will go on. And on the phone, and I go, quitting is not an option, Mike. And he said, well, there you go. I just needed to, and I can look back and say, God put Mike there in that phone call, and I wrote about it in my book, that gave me that realization of where I was at and the whole idea of grit and that quitting's not an option. Um, I wasn't going to be like one of those people that, you know, said, well, we gave it a good shot. It didn't work out. Well, sometimes do we do we fail or do we just quit too soon? And I was going to be the person who didn't quit too soon. And I was going to ride this out one step at a time. So I think that, those type of things, yes, God was working on me, but realizing again that I wasn't in control like I was, like I thought I was. That was all very good. But when I was stricken with cancer, uh, at the time when they said it's multiple myeloma, I didn't even know what multiple myeloma was. Uh, and that people die from it all the time. And I do know several people who have died from it. I'm one of the fortunate ones. Uh, it was at that time and going through the treatment where I realized I don't understand how anybody can go through that without a strong faith in God
Hmm.
to help carry him through it. I just don't understand how people can do that. And maybe they don't. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I had to lean on God a lot. Obviously, I leaned on my wife a lot. You have to have a strong caregiver during those times. And, uh, she still takes great care of me. You know, she asked the question, how you feeling? And I got a headache. What's that from? And I go, wow, it's just, I got stuff. But
Right.
she cares so much for me. And she was a great caregiver. So I needed that great caregiver. I needed great doctors that I got at Mayo Clinic. But most importantly, I needed that faith in God. And we've talked about this before. When they found the tumor in my back that was causing most of the pain I was going through early on, I had radiation, and which wasn't on my bucket list, but uh,
Right.
I'm sitting on that, laying on that table the first time, and the technicians leave to go in the other room, and the machine starts to buzz and adjust and all that kind of stuff, and I I looked through that room. I looked through that building. I mean, I just was not there here. And I knew I had to pray. And the prayer that came out was, Lord, I'm moving over. You get in the driver's seat. I'm along for the ride. Take me where you want me to go. And, when you do a prayer like that, you're not sure what that means per se. Careful what you ask for, type of thing.
Yeah.
But that was a moment, that was probably the moment where my faith went from here to here. And people like to ask, especially evangelical Christians, we like to ask, well, is that the moment that you gave your life over to God? And I go, no, I've already did that, but it's probably the moment where I decided I needed to be a follower of Christ and not just a fan. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of treatment, a lot of pain and suffering ahead of me, but you know, because of the grace of God and because I was able to just kind of turn it over to Him, that I was able to potentially face death without that fear
Yeah.
that most of us will have while you're going through that. So
That's amazing. The faith comes to all of us, in different times at different moments, and for different reasons. And I love
yeah,
the way you talk about yours. It's a kind of a living, breathing, asset, in your life, and I
yeah.
love that. I think it's very powerful. Was there ever a moment where you questioned it?
Well, the short answer, like some of my doctors like to do, is no. Um,
I can appreciate that.
have I questioned, do I have, a strong enough faith? Do I question, am I truly doing what God wants me to do? Uh, am I questioning whether, I'm where I should be? And now, God, I think the hardest thing for me right now is this strong belief that God has kept me alive for a reason. I jokingly tell people that I think that's the reason why it took me 3 years to get my book done, because I was afraid that maybe it was just to get the book done.
Didn't want to
But
check that box too soon.
careful what you ask for.
Right. I appreciate the levity.
but, but I'm sorry.
That's great.
Um, but I truly believe that God has kept me alive for a reason. And I best be working on trying to figure that out. So it's not about selling books. It's not about how many public speaking engagements I get. It's not about how many podcasts I do. It's about getting the message out to others and inspiring others and giving them hope and telling them how I got through what I got through. Not promising them that anything, because we never know, what's going to happen.
Right.
But as a Christian, I know that the best is yet to come. And that's the way I look at life.
Right.
Now, I just admire other friends I have that are strong Christians that to them it's just, of course, to me, it's like, nah, I got to think about that. I just want to make sure, I enjoy my life, but at the same time, I know that I'm assured of something much better in the future. So
Love it.
that's, kind of where I'm at.
Love it. It seems like it's a pretty big part of your family too. I know you mentioned that your wife's, very devoted.
Yes.
Is that how you raised your kids? Just out of curiosity?
Yeah. Yes. We eventually got our kids into a Christian school. Um, Cost us a lot of money.
Always does.
Yeah, four kids. At one time we had four kids at this Christian school, and I'm going,
Wow.
man, that's, but I just said, well, I guess we're being prepared for college tuition. Yeah. But we were fortunate enough we could do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can remember at least once I told my wife, I said, just think if we wouldn't have put our kids through Christian school, where we'd be financially right now. And she said, we made one great investment, didn't we? And that's the truth. So our kids are all Christians. They've made the commitment to Christ. Are they, as strong Christians as I'd want them to be? Maybe not, but I had to go through my journey.
Right.
They have to go through theirs. It's not my journey, it's theirs. And so God will help them through that. But you get little glimpses that you just smile. Like our son and his wife and their, what is it, 1.5, 19 months or whatever, old granddaughter of ours, drove up from Iowa last weekend for the weekend. They're going to come up for Christmas too, but we haven't seen enough of each other. So they had the free weekend. They drove up and we spent the weekend together. And Sunday morning, I get up and having a cup of coffee, and Wesley asked the question. He said, "So are we going to church?" And Jeannie and I looked at each other and said, "I guess we are." And I jumped out of my chair and, because we could have said, no, we can watch it online. It's more convenient, you know.
Okay.
But he asked that question and we said, yeah, we're going. So, little things like that. It's just, you know, it's nice to say somewhere we have done something right. So,
Nice. Congratulations on that. I mean, that's a heck of an accomplishment, especially in
especially with
today's
four
world.
kids too.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, you had to hit that jackpot 4 times to get that done.
Well,
So
we've had a lot of practice. And as I say in my book, I make no bones about it that we did have that under control because we went boy, girl, boy, girl. And most people would have gone boy, girl. Today, they go boy, girl, and they go, good, we got a family.
right.
And then we had the boy, and my wife said, well, let's even up the sides. And so, I mean, and that's by the grace of God. I mean,
Absolutely.
we have a wonderful family. So,
Absolutely. Did you ever feel, as you were battling all this stuff, and I mean the financial and the health, everything that you've gone through, did you ever feel as though you were facing something more than just bad luck? You were facing more than just the economy. Maybe you were facing that spiritual warfare thing that people want to talk about all the time.
you know, I think as Christians, we always have to be aware that the evil one will try to work on us. And of course, you hear it a lot when things don't go right or you're tempted, and all that. It must mean that you're doing something right because you're getting his attention. We always concentrate on wanting to get God's attention,
Yep.
but we are also maybe are getting the evil one's attention too. And um, I don't say that in a bragging way. I think we have to be understanding of that. And I suspect there'll be more trials ahead, and I suspect we'll have to, you know, turn turn to God one more time. And yes, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and things start to break after a certain age, and it's all that. None of us want to get old, but because of sin, that's part of the deal. And
Right.
um, you know, um, but I think it's at those times where we just need to turn to our Lord's promises and say, "Help me through this, guide me through it." And but yes, you know, I think that that spiritual warfare is certainly evident in our world today. It's evident in our country today. But it's also, evident in our lives too. And why don't things just go the way we want them to? Why can't things just, you know,
Right.
be hunky dory all the time? Well, it's just that's not the way life is. It's that constant struggle. And yes, the evil one is whether it's us or our kids or whatever, he's looking any way he can to discourage us. So,
Yeah. I love that answer, and it backs up something I say on the show a lot, and that's I really do believe that the that evil is sort of paving the path for for instance, the guy who just wants to lay on the couch and not do anything with his life, really isn't trying to make himself or his family better, and is just resigned to his own pleasures, Netflix, a beer, some pizza, so on. I think that the devil actually makes a smoother path for that person, takes difficulties away from that person because they're not a threat, and he wants to make sure that they don't become
no,
one.
yep. Good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
I, you know, I think of the expression in the Bible, it's God's word, that what sometimes we see as bad, God can turn it around and make it good. And I think I kind of see that way. It's kind of, okay, I'm, not battling at all, but I'm dealing with another cancer right now. It's the one that most guys have to deal with eventually.
Oh, okay.
And, I'm doing tests and, people are all, some people are concerned. I mean, I have a brother that just went through it. Our father, went through it. And anyway, I don't mean to be flippant about it, but after what I've gone through, I've kind of like, this is more of a nuisance than anything else in my life. And if I'm going to talk to God about it, and probably saying, "Hey, God, did you really have to? I mean, I got things rolling right. I don't need this nuisance hanging over my head. I just, you know, but that's kind of the way I look at it. Now, that being said, I've got a really good friend who was probably diagnosed with metastatic uh, prostate cancer about the same time I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And he's gone through a lot. He goes to Mayo Clinic, and it's just always something. And so I certainly don't want to. And he's in my men's small group. We meet Thursday mornings, every Thursday on Zoom and all that. And, you know, I really empathize with what he's had to go through. But you know what? We lift each other up, especially as a group of men. We can lift each other up and pray for each other. And um, those are all good things. I mean, it's just like that's what makes life worth living. It's not about, it's not about the success. It's what you do with the success that's important.
Sure.
And, it's the way I look at it. So,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I just had you on my Power of Man podcast, in addition to another one, and we talked a little bit about that kind of thing, about men
yeah.
meeting in a brotherhood. I guess I'm not sure how it got by me. I didn't realize that you were running a group like that. That's fantastic.
Well, yeah, um, I'm not going to take full credit. I always consider myself second in command. We have another gentleman but this all came from a group that we were all in I drop a name, Vince Miller, who started the well, what's now a national organization called Resolute,
Hmm.
and it's about making men better leaders, better fathers, better husbands, that type of thing. And Vince and I are good friends, and in fact, he wrote one of the testimonies for my book, and um, and that just branched off to where a bunch of us said, well, let's keep meeting. When we were done doing our thing, our cohort, let's just keep meeting.
Yeah,
And it's it, God has a way of, these things just, it's not coincidence. There's a lot of things that happen because of that. I have a peer group that's called the Derrick Group, part of a construction organization that we bunch of us belong to. And I kind of started to grab some guys I was getting to know after a while and said, "Hey guys, let's start our own peer group and let's meet a couple times a year and help each other out with our businesses." And a lot of those guys, half the group now is retired, and the other half is thinking about retirement. And I don't know where I'm at. I'm somewhere in between there. And but you know what? The group is a bunch of Christian men that are friends. We're just friends. And it's evolved over the years, and it's just amazing how God does that. I mean, he works through us and helps each other out. So,
for sure. One of the things we talk about in this program is building discipleship, and that's how that
yes.
we're all called to do. Is that something that you guys do together? Is that something you have tried to do through your speaking in your books, or is that
Yeah.
just a totally
Yeah,
separate thing?
I'm very humbled by this, but my men's small group that meets on Thursday morning, they are just very encouraging. Back when I was getting the book written and trying to get it published and all that, they were saying, "When's this book going to be done?" You know, People need this book. One of the members of the group, he nicknamed me Mordecai many years ago. And finally, I asked him, I said, "Are you talking like Mordecai in the Old Testament, Esther's uncle?" And he says, "No." He said, "Mordecai was the name of the gentleman who brought the message of Jesus to Billy Graham." And little
Wow.
known fact, anyway,
Another thing I'm learning.
because I've not been bashful about my faith.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't hold a Bible study here at the office, or anything like that. I maybe should, but I don't. But I'm not bashful about, you know, telling people why I wrote the book. And in fact, I want to bring the message to others, message of hope, of that stick to itness. Hey, when the rug is pulled out from under you, here's how you can get through it. And my book certainly talks about, my faith. It talks about the necessity to trust in God. And I somewhat end the book by saying that I get through life pretty good right now because I trust in God.
Nice.
And so, yes, I believe that it's our job as disciples of Christ to take his message seriously and go out and make disciples. Uh, you know, and this is the way I'm doing it. Until God hits me upside the head with a 2x6 again, I'm going to assume that I'm doing what he wants me to do. And, he
Yeah.
whispers to me sometimes. He whispered to me at the Western Wall in Jerusalem back in 2018. And, it's just fantastic how my life, since the storms started, back to back storms, my life is better because of it. Now,
Well,
don't get me wrong. I'm not happy I have cancer. I'm in remission, but one thing about multiple myeloma is you can be pretty much assured that it will come back. Um, that's why I go to Mayo 3 months or every 3 months. Um, but I've been in remission since 2018. And when I was diagnosed in 2013, my doctor at Mayo Clinic said, "You won't hear me use the word remission with multiple myeloma." So that's why I say I'm a walking, talking miracle. And I want to use that for good. Uh, I'm not the only one that's gone through what I've gone through. A lot of businessmen have gone through hard times. In fact, probably if you have any kind of a longevity in business, you've gone through hard times. And if you haven't, you haven't been in business long enough. And
Right.
I'm not the only one that's had to battle cancer or something like that. But what I did was I used my story, writing it down, talking about it, doing public speaking, now have a book. Um, I not only told about my story, which is a compelling story that people like to listen to. People like to hear about, well, how'd you get through it? That's always important to people. But more importantly, the third element, which I think is the most important, is how it's changed me and
Yeah.
how it's made me a better man and how it's made me so much stronger in my faith and in my Lord and Savior.
Nice. Nice. The you feel like you're living your life on purpose now?
Yes, definitely, definitely living more on purpose. And I have people, in fact, that just have a couple of business people that we have a relationship. They were in our office this morning. I told them I had to cut out early because I got an important podcast to do.
That's right.
And they go, "You like doing that?" And I go, "That's my mission. That's my mission is to get the word out." And yes, I'm enjoying that. And some people say, "Well, then this is what you're going to do when you retire." And I go, "I'm still trying to define what retirement is." You know, I know I don't look it. I know it's hard to believe, but I'm 71 years old. And if I struggle with anybody, anything, I struggle with retirement, what it is, because I get the question all the time. And I
Yeah.
think the easiest answer is to say, you know, God said I'm not done yet. And until he tells me I'm done and I should move on to other things, I don't know. Am I doing too much? I, I don't know. I mean, between, running a business, um, you know, marketing a book, doing some public speaking, doing podcasts. Yeah, I think I'm doing life on purpose right now. I just have to keep in mind to not let it interfere with my family and my wife. And whenever she asks me a question, say, "Well, how many podcasts you got going on here or whatever?" I have to stop and say, "Are you insinuating I have too many or what?" "Oh, no, no." She asked me the other day, "Are you happy?" And I'm kind of like in my mind, I'm going, what kind of question is that? And
Yeah.
are you insinuating something or whatever? And then those are moments you just pause and say, "Yeah, I'm really happy." Um, I'm content right now, knowing full well that I don't know what's around the corner. Um, but you know, I'm content, but I'm not going to be complacent.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at in my life right now. So,
Well, it sounds like your wife is a pretty incredible young lady.
oh, she's one of those that I might be biased, but she's one of those that is beautiful inside and out.
Nice. Nice.
So,
Well, as long as she has, the control of the date book, I think you're going to be okay. As long as
yeah,
you let her know how many
yeah,
podcasts you have. So,
yeah, there we go. I got to be careful about things like that. So,
right on. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, when you're ready to make the move and stop being a guest and have your own podcast, okay? Because with your voice, brother, You could be on this side of the mic easy. All right, telling your story. You call me when that happens. I'll help you get
Okay.
going. But
I will do that. I appreciate that, Rory.
you got
So
it.
I need friends like you. So,
Oh man, the day is coming where you're going to be my biggest competition. I'm going to like get bumped off the top spot for this guy. It's coming. I can tell you, folks. I can feel
nah.
it. I can feel it. Listen, Bill, I do have one more question for you, but before I kind of let us go, tell everybody how they can reach you, how they can find your book, yeah, contact you the whole bit.
So, my book was published by Morgan James Publishing. They're a New York publisher, which means it's distributed, I guess I can say worldwide, but it's distributed wherever books are sold. So I don't want to necessarily tell people where to go. There's a one place that a lot of people go for books. It's there. And but it's at Barnes and Noble. It's at other places too. And uh, you can go online. That's probably the easiest thing. Uh, Restored by the Storm, Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges. Um, I have a website that I love people to go to because it talks more about me and who I am and my journey. It's BillDerrick.com, and they can get in touch with me through there. There's also a place where they can just hit the link and they can order the book through bookshop.org, which I've got set up to take care of sending out books. So yes, and like you have alluded to, I love, I have a great message. God's given me the voice, and I like to use that to go out and talk and speak and, do corporate events, do public events for organizations that need a speaker or whatever. So that's all. I love doing that. So BillDerrick.com.
All right, I appreciate that. And final question for you, brother, before we let you go on this wonderful day today. And thank you again for being here. There are a lot of folks out there who are battling their own demons. They're battling their own hard times. And some of them are going to react more like I did in the past than like you had the temerity to do. So, what do you have? What's a good piece of advice you have? Maybe a little bit of guidance for folks who are going through those really tough times and might be doubting the faith that they've leaned on in the past. And maybe you're feeling a little weak in that area. Is there anything you can say to encourage them or help them, or maybe something they can do to
I
get out
would,
of that?
yeah, it may not be the expected advice, but the first thing I tend to say when asked that question is, first of all, realize the storm will end. This is not a rest of your life type thing. The storm will end. The problem is we don't know when and how. We have no guarantees about that. But through patience and through trusting in God, deepening your faith, uh, you'll get through it. Uh, the other piece of advice I would say is try to develop an attitude of gratitude, as Zig Ziglar used to always say. Um, when you're grateful in life, when you're grateful for what you have, it helps you to forget about the things that you're experiencing that are very pleasant. And I might say that the evil one out there doesn't want you to be grateful for what you have. He wants you to be jealous of others and what they have. Now, turn it around and just be grateful for what you have, the people around you, you know, figure out, I mean, I start every day and I look outside and I don't care whether it's raining, snowing, wind blowing, or just a beautiful sunny day. I just say, you know what? It's another day, God. Thank you. And that's the way I look at life. So
Nice. I knew we were going to get a fantastic closeout from you. There's it doesn't matter what question I ask you, you're always ready for it, and it's
you
just
are so, yeah.
it's a blessing to
Thank
have you
you.
on the show, brother. It really is. All right, folks, the author of Restored by the Storm, Navigating Through Life's Unexpected Challenges, Bill Derrick. Bill, thank you, man, for being here, for sharing your faith, and for being such a fantastic example for everybody else. It was amazing having you here today. Thank you.
You are welcome, and I really appreciate a chance to get in front of all your followers and have a chance to tell my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks, wow. I mean, what a story. And what a closing. Um, it is time. We've said it before. It absolutely is time to wake up the lions. But even more than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place with your brothers and your sisters and let them hear you roar. The world is ready. You're ready. You just have to believe it.